Okay, guys, we are finishing up our lunch, and we are also finishing up on module two. We've only got this lesson left, and then we'll be done, and then we can go to our next sightseeing destination. So I'm going to go ahead and share, and we are going to talk about color and texture, our final two elements. Alrighty. So color is one of our more complex of the elements. There are definitely a lot of different parts to color that we're going to talk about. We have different color schemes, color relationships. We have the color wheel, and we also have two activities this week that are dealing with color, the element of color. So if there is one to pay attention to this week, it is probably color. The definition for color, color is what we perceive when light reflects off of an object. The key elements are hue, which is the pure color from the color wheel. And here is our color wheel with our 12 little color wedges. This is the one that we're going to refer to the most when we talk about color. There are a couple different types of color wheels, but or color relationships, but this is the one we're going to refer to. So if we have a pure hue, that means that it has not been manipulated at all. White and black haven't been added into it. It's just the pure color. The value is the lightness or the darkness of the color. So when a hue has white or black added into it, it changes the value of the color or how light or how dark it is. And then lastly, intensity or saturation is the more common word for it. It's the brightness or dullness of a color. The saturation will decrease when white, black, gray, or another color is added into it. And when a color is its pure hue, that means it's most saturated that it can be. So red by itself is a very saturated hue, as are all of these. But when it starts having other things added into it, so even the color wheel, for example, when red and violet are added into one another, the hue diminishes a little bit. It gets less intense as it goes on. Okay, so this is another one that we have not really had to talk about so far, but color can make us feel different things. There's a lot of psychology behind it and research evidence based in color affecting our mood or our emotions. So it can directly modify our thoughts, moods, action, or even our health. And sometimes cultures will follow established customs within their art, and we'll talk more about this in our art history unit. But it is interesting to note as well that there are certain cultures that follow different color schemes that may have symbolism behind them. But I want to talk about this chart that I have right here. And it's about color affecting our emotions and how companies and marketing advertising agencies use color to influence its buyers. Our most common is fast food restaurants. We see yellow and red used almost always in fast food logos. And that is because they make us feel optimistic and they also make us feel excited. And so when we see those colors, we want to stop in and, get something to eat like that we want, a burger or fries or something that's going to make us feel good. And it also, with the red color specifically, there's been a lot of research-based evidence that red, because it makes you excited, it can actually boost your metabolism. And so it makes you hungrier when you see this color. And so it makes sense to why, a lot of these fast food restaurants might have their big, arch or whatever raised up 2 miles away that you can see. And when you start seeing it get closer, you might get excited. Or if it pops up on your phone as an advertisement and you weren't hungry before, you might see it and then get hungry all of a sudden. So here's some different companies that use color in their marketing to try to draw their customers in. I think some interesting ones, we see a lot of the fast food restaurants, but one that I'm particularly interested in is that purple as a color makes us feel creative, imaginative, and wise. And the one fast food restaurant that I can think of, and maybe you've thought of too while we've been having this conversation, that doesn't use yellow or red, there is a little bit of yellow in it, but it's Taco Bell. And Taco Bell, at the time that it came about, was the first of its kind to be a non-burger and fries fast food restaurant, to have this same type of, idea, this business model. And so it was very creative and imaginative and outside of the box, if you will, for Taco Bell to, put itself in this market with McDonald's and Wendy's and these ones that have been around for decades before it. So I think that one's really interesting that they chose to kind of go against those colors to stand out, and be more, of a standalone type of thing. But you can look through this if you'd like to, if you want to pause it, to see other logos that exist within here and kind of what they represent. Alrighty, so talking about some color relationships that are going to be important for us to understand later on as well. We've got complementary colors. Those are colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel. So I'm going to go back to our color wheel, for example. But our red and our green, those are complements. They're as far away on the color wheel as they can possibly be, as are violet and yellow and orange and blue. Those colors are going to separate. So when you use them together in a color scheme, like here, they're going to create really high contrast with one another. And so it's a really bold, very bright color scheme to use. Analogous colors, on the other hand, are colors that are next to each other on the color wheel, like blue, blue, green, and green. And those create a sense of harmony. And it feels cohesive when you see those colors together. We also have warm colors that are red, orange, and yellow, that evoke sort of an energy and warmth to them. And then lastly, we have cool colors like blue, green, and violet that can evoke a calmness and distance. So a lot of the times when you see compositions, warm colors will be in the foreground and cool colors will be in the background. All right, so I wanted you to take a minute in the questions here. And what color relationship do these photos represent? Based on those color relationships we just talked about, the complementary, analogous, warm, and cool. What do you see happening here? Okay, so the answer for this one is complementary colors. We see green and red, we see orange and blue, and we see purple and yellow. And these are very bold images. They stand out really strongly, and have a lot of contrast to them because of that use of complementary color. All right, our next one, what color relationship do these photos represent? And the answer to it is analogous. These are colors that are all close together on the color wheel, and that's why they feel like there's a sense of harmony here. They feel very, very harmonious, very unified. And then what color relationship do these photos represent? This one's probably a little easier. This is cool colors that creates a feeling of sort of calm and peace. And then lastly, this one. These are warm colors, and these have a very warm feeling about them, a very kind of nurturing, bold feeling to them. They're all reds and yellows and oranges. So hopefully you got all those right. If not, then definitely kind of revisit the color relationships again. All right. Our last element is texture. And texture is how something feels or appears to feel in an artwork. A real texture is tactile and you can actually like reach out and touch it. And an implied texture is a visual illusion. And on the left here, these are real textures. And on the right, these are implied textures. Okay, so real texture or tactile texture is texture that you can actually touch. And it's found in sculptures, collages, ceramics, and mixed media. It's not going to be found in two-dimensional work, though. Artists build it up with materials like thick paint, impasto, natural objects like leaves or sand, or layered surfaces. So I guess I misspoke there. You can have these in two-dimensional work, but they have to be created like the impasto technique with the paint, where you build up those layers of paint where it's actually like visible or physically you can touch it. But it's not being implied, if that makes sense. And this is a very famous sculptural piece that deals almost entirely with texture. It's just a little teacup saucer set, and instead of porcelain, like you would imagine this to be, It has a hairy, like furry texture to it that kind of makes us feel uneasy, a little grotesque. But it's all dealing with texture and how we interact with objects and different sort of feelings that we have about different textures and kind of swapping, one expectation of a texture for another. And then implied texture is texture that looks real, but is actually flat or smooth. And this is found in paintings, drawings, prints, and photographs. How an artist can create an implied texture through line and detail, using fine repeated lines mimics fur, wood grain, or wrinkles, value and contrast, to create highlights and shadows to trick the eye into seeing bumps or depth. And then lastly, color and pattern. Strategic color shifts mimic light and surface qualities. And implied texture, just like with value and with color, adds visual interest, realism, or mood, even when there's no actual texture to touch. A great example of that I'm sure we're all aware of is the artist Van Gogh, who has a lot of implied texture in his artwork, like we see here. And this almost gives this the feeling of like motion in a way. When I look at this piece, because of the texture created through the little short lines of the brushwork here, this feels like these trees are sort of like there's a breeze coming through them, and I almost feel like I'm there. And I think that's has a lot to do with the texture that's added in the work. You might feel differently, but if you look at this piece and you think about being in this, little tree grove, it kind of feels like there's like this wind or this breeze happening. And so it creates sort of a mood by doing that. And this is another artwork. It is Young Hair by Albert Dreher. This is a watercolor and gouache piece. And why this piece works, Dreher masterfully uses tiny brushstrokes, layered value, and delicate color variation to give the illusion of soft, fluffy fur like we see here. But if you touch the artwork, the surface would be completely flat. It's just visual trickery. So just like with this piece, the Van Gogh piece also does the same thing where there is not actual physical texture there, but there is the implication of texture. Okay, so to wrap everything up, this is, going back to all three of the lessons we've gone over so far. These are the building blocks of art. It's really, really important that you understand what the elements of art are and how they can influence an artwork. So just to repeat, the elements are line, shape, form, space, texture, value, and color. And these are all the building blocks or the form of all visual art. Just like ingredients in a recipe, artists combine them in unique ways to communicate emotions, tell stories, and build meaning. And next, the next module that we'll have is the principles of design. So if the elements are the ingredients, the principles are the recipes. This is what we use to follow, to organize those elements and to create harmony, contrast, balance, rhythm, and more. So these principles and elements, this part of our art theory unit, is going to make up that form part of the subject matter, form, and content that we talked about back in lesson 1. And remember, that's really, really important for this first half of the class, that you understand what those 3 things mean and how to apply your knowledge of them. So that's the takeaway here. So now I want you to think about how might an artist use the same elements like line and color, but achieve a totally different result just by arranging them differently. And there'll be an open-ended question about that as well. So I hope you enjoyed everything. And as I wrap up my park lunch, I'm going to move on to my next destination, and it'll be a surprise for next time. So I will see you then, and best of luck with your assignments this week.